Which is interesting because we're going to India next week, and we'll finish the whole book just in time. I think we're on text 67. So, what's happened? We've gone over these really powerful verses in the Gita, the essence of the text, what Krishna himself says are the best instructions, the most important instructions. Are you okay? We good? Okay. We've gone over these key verses. They're not just key, they're, according to Krishna, the most important verses in the whole text. And so we just finished them. And then, what's going to come next? What else is there? What else can Krishna say? Certainly the climax of the text just occurred. And so, from that zenith point, what else is there to do? And that's what should be on all of our minds as we look at the final verses. The last verse he spoke, he said to give up all dharma and just surrender to him. It's a very radical statement about the essence of spirituality and what Krishna wants us to do. That's a really, big verse. Prityajya, give up all dharma completely. Sarva dharman prityajya. Prityajya. So, you're left like what else is there? What else can Krishna say? How much more emphatic can he be? And so, over and over again I keep thinking, okay, Krishna kind of wrapped things up and then there's more. I don't feel that way at this point. Krishna said really everything he possibly can, repeated himself multiple times, how much he loves us, how simple spiritual life is, how much he's willing to do for us. It's a full-fledged bhakti explosion that Krishna has presented, which paints a picture of who Krishna is, how Krishna feels about us. So many things. Okay, so then what comes next? And then we have these verses. Idam te na. This is text 67. Idam te na tapaskaya na bhaktaya kadachana. Idam te na vachyam. That's the second line. That word's critical. This should not be spoken by you to one who is not tapaskaya, who's not austere. Tapas, who's not doing tapasya. Na bhaktaya, to one who's not a devotee. Kadachana, at any time. You should not speak this. This should not be spoken by you to someone who doesn't have these two qualifications. Na cha shushrushrave. Shushrushrave. Not to one who doesn't want to hear. Shushrushaveh also means one who doesn't want to serve. One who doesn't want to hear, one who doesn't want to serve. Someone who's not submissive. And then, na abhyasuyati, or not to someone who is na chamam abhyasuyati, not to one who speaks ill of me. Abhyasuyati means speaks ill, speaks poorly about me, who's offensive, who's envious. So there's 4 kinds of people that you shouldn't teach what I just taught you to. People who are austere, who aren't devoted, who don't want to hear, and who are envious. This confidential knowledge may never be explained to those who are not austere or devoted or engaged in devotional service, nor to one who is envious of me. So right off the bat, I can think of a couple of problems with this. Number one is, why not speak it, and then people will take what they can. The rain falls indiscriminately on the ground, on, crops and on buildings and on whatever, and then plants take advantage of it and buildings don't, and that's the nature of divine wisdom. You should just rain it down and people either accept it or they won't. I think that challenge could legitimately be made. Additionally, if the purpose of the Gita is to tell somebody to be a bhakta, then ostensibly when they hear the book, they're not a bhakta. Otherwise, you would not tell them in your final instruction to be a devotee. Krishna just said, Bhava mad bhakta, be my devotee. If that's the ultimate instruction, and you're not supposed to tell somebody that unless they're already a bhakta, then you wind up with a closed system where no one gets to enter, and the only people who are there are people who are already there, and then there's no way for people to get there. I think these are 2 legitimate critiques which could be leveled against this verse. I think of them when I read the verse. And so I think they need to be troubleshot. I think the most obvious answer is that Krishna's just recommended a really radical idea to give up all dharma and just surrender to him. It's kind of a high level of spirituality. People could really run with that in the wrong direction. You look at Christianity, like some modern forms of Christianity, and they say you can do anything. It's just Jesus' mercy, and so you can do anything and get away with it. And in fact, even to try to rectify yourself is bad. It's almost like the best thing you can do is just wallow in your pathos and wait for Jesus to save you. So I think this idea of bhakti in the wrong hands stops people from being moral. They think I get to give up all dharma, and then they play lip service to surrender to Krishna, and what they wind up with is just they gave up all dharma. So perhaps not the entire Gita can't be spoken to one who's not a devotee. But perhaps the really intense theistic finish of the Gita, the climax of the Gita, that should be reserved for people who have become favorable. It's an intimate teaching. It's an advanced teaching. And there has to be some qualification on the part of the hearer. I think that argument works as a rebuttal. I think another argument, and so here not being a devotee means not at least being somewhat of a devotee, not at least being a little bit favorable. And then you hear some really advanced thing and you just don't appreciate it because you're in a bad space. If somebody needs to hear that God exists, or that you're the soul and not the body, or some preliminary teaching, and you want to talk to them about Krishna and Vrindavan, or Krishna loving you, it ends up sounding cheesy. People need to get to a place where they can hear such elevated things. You know, like somebody meets somebody, they go on the first date, and they're telling them they love them by the end of the date, and you're like, what's your problem? Something wrong with you? And so, I think the argument that this teaching, that all you need to do is surrender to Krishna, He'll take care of everything, that this, really being introduced to the personality of Krishna and the really extreme loving nature of the deity. If you're not ready for it, it kind of falls on deaf ears, and it might even make you worse. And so maybe the preliminary teachings of the Gita are for everybody, but then these more advanced teachings depend on somebody at least becoming theistic, having some faith, being open to higher teachings, etc., etc. I think that works as an answer. I think another answer is that even the general teachings depend on some favorableness, some openness. And so even if it isn't just the highest teachings, even if it's the whole Gita, I think you could make an argument that some people might not be ready for any of it. And so Krishna's statement here is that there requires to be some turning towards divinity. Another argument is it's the devotee's job to help you turn towards divinity before revealing the full length and breadth of the teachings to you. And they kind of warm you up and prepare you and get you to turn favorable, and then they give you those teachings, and devotees have to walk that razor's edge. Or the devotees might even disobey this instruction and go big and be extra merciful and take risks. And in that sense, they're kind of like breaking even the laws of what's fair or what's deserved. They're in their ecstasy. They don't make a difference. They don't make a distinction. They just reach out to everybody. And the devotees have that freedom. For Krishna, there needs to be some justice and mercy coupled together. Krishna needs to be fair to everyone in the creation. The devotees can go ahead and just, if I go and talk to 3 people who don't deserve to be talked to, but I don't get to 7 billion other people because I'm not around them, no one can fault me because I'm a limited living entity. And so devotees, as moral agents who are not omnipotent, we can try to stretch things, go beyond what people deserve. And the fact that we get to some people and don't get to others doesn't reflect badly on Krishna, because we're by free will, we're our own moral agents. So on one hand, the teachings that Krishna is espousing right now are very advanced. Not advanced like it's not a full-fledged Braj Bhakti, romantic love for the deity, but it's not too far off, and it's definitely like the cornerstone of that. It's definitely the foundation of that. Romantic love for Krishna is not so far away from these verses. We're pretty close, at least to the building blocks of it. That needs to be held back till somebody's ready. Alternatively, more of it might need to be held back till somebody's ready. And that's because we're free beings and we have to at least be a little favorable. And before that, let's just talk about the existence of God, or why you should believe in God, and some of the really basic stuff, maybe even more basic than some of the basic teachings of the Gita. And That speaks to our free will and our responsibility in the equation and the synergistic nature of spiritual life. It doesn't ascribe fault to Krishna. Can you go stop that? It's just too much noise for me. The door keeps opening and closing. Just go stop it. Tell me that to stop immediately and for good. Thank you. I'm tired, and it's hard for me to pay attention, and then other stuff makes it harder. So yeah, number one is that the teachings are very advanced. And it makes sense to not share that with everybody. Number two is even the basic teachings may require some level of participation. It might not be you have to be a full-blown devotee, but you at least have to be, have a devoted mindset on some level. Did you took care of it?
No, nobody was around. I can't find anyone.
So yeah, number one is the teachings are advanced. Number two is they might not be advanced, but at least there has to be some buy-in. And maybe being a bhakta doesn't mean being a full bhakta, but at least you got to believe in God and be a little favorable to the idea. We certainly see that sometimes going too big, too quick isn't the right play. It's not good for you. It's not good for the other person. Number three, we have to take into account that we have a synergistic understanding of spirituality, and therefore there's some responsibility for us to do our part and for us to turn towards divinity. And so by Krishna requiring something from us, it's not necessarily a fault. And then number four is maybe devotees don't follow this completely. Maybe it's Krishna's job to tell us, hey, only give this to people who are ready, who deserve to hear it, who want to hear it. And then maybe the devotees go a little overboard and they break this. As free moral agents, they can break this. Krishna's doing his part, which is to say don't do it. Only give it to people who deserve it, who are ready for it. And the devotees can feel free to not follow Krishna's instruction and go the extra mile for people. And if they only go the extra mile for certain people, then that's their own free choice, and it doesn't reflect poorly on God, who, if he went the extra mile for a few people and not for everybody else, would be guilty of the fault of partiality. Go. Beat them. Does that make sense? And so the devotees could be guilty of partiality, but that doesn't reflect poorly on them. They become these ecstatic, loving people. They went against Krishna's instruction that Krishna has to give, only give this to people who deserve it, and the devotees push that envelope. And that's their great mercy. But because they're not omnipotent beings, the fault of partiality doesn't stain them because they're just doing as much as they can, and they're limited. Do you guys follow that? Additionally, devotees kind of walk that line between justice and mercy and try to help people out. Now you could argue that devotees are really the ones to give Krishna to others because they're the ones that have Krishna. Krishna, the love for Krishna, does love for Krishna belong to Krishna? Arguably not. Arguably love for Krishna belongs to the devotees. Krishna is himself. He's lovable.
I just told him.
Go tell him again. Who is it? Tell them to come here now, please. It's hard for me to think, and now it's like a thing. Tell them to come. Tell them to come. Sit. So yeah, for the 50th time. What are the reasons? Yeah?
The devotees might not be ready for it.
No. What are the reasons? Yeah.
Because it's for advanced.
The devotees might not be ready for it makes no sense because it says the devotees are ready for it. So the first words out of your mouth were incorrect. Go ahead, Shane.
It's an advanced teaching for advanced devotees.
Nope, wrong. You made the same mistake she made. I'm like bewildered by your guys'. I thought, geez, I'm boring. You guys are repeating the same thing. But both things out of your mouth were both directly and absolutely incorrect. Does Krishna say only advanced devotees should get the teaching? He does not, Shane. What does he say? Only devotees get the teaching. Therefore, by saying advanced devotees, you're indicating that devotees are not worthy of the teaching, but that's not what Krishna says, so you strayed away from the verse. Did you follow that? All right, let's try and focus, guys. Let's go. Go.
Krishna just shared potentially a more advanced teaching, and so he may be referring to that particular teaching about giving up all dharma and just focusing on him.
And who gets that teaching?
That one would be reserved only for devotees.
See that? No need to modify the word, because Krishna doesn't. You dills. Just follow the text. How about that? All right. Bingo. That's number one. Number two? Yeah.
You can exercise your free will and maybe disobey.
That's not number two. That's number three. But let's keep going. Number two? I'll come back to you. Yeah.
And even those that aren't ready to hear it will require some sort of favorability.
No, I don't know what that means. It doesn't make sense. Number two? Yeah.
Even the more basic teachings require a bit of receptiveness.
That's right, and therefore the verse saying the book could either be about this particular teaching you just taught. That's what idam means, this, and so it could be referring to what came immediately before it, or it could mean this whole text. Usually, this means something which is right there, right in front of you, and so easily it could be seen as that direct teaching beforehand. But you could also say this entire text. You can go now. Don't go through that door again. You could also see it as the entire text. And even that entire text requires at least somebody to be a devotee. That's number two. Number three?
You can exercise your free will and maybe not follow it strictly.
Don't know what that means. But that's number four. I do know what it means. It's not number three. You're killing me, dude. Got to follow in order. Number one is what? Dude, everybody got to pay attention. I'm having a hard time. I'm paying attention. I'm tired than you are. I'm older than you are. Twice as old as you are. Get together. What's number one?
Even with basic teachings.
No. What's number one?
You just referred to an advanced teaching, and so it's potentially only reserved for devotees.
Yeah, it's like I feel like if you guys are 12 and you've graduated 6th grade, you should be able to answer all these questions without any hesitation whatsoever. If you can't answer all these questions without any hesitation, it's arguable that you haven't graduated grade school yet. Okay, that's number one. Number two?
Even the basic teachings require receptivity.
Even the basic teachings may require one to be a devotee. Number three?
Even if the devotee goes out of their way to explain it to someone and they're not receptive, there's no fault on God because the devotee is a moral agent and they can do it themselves.
No. Number three is the point that, and this idea that you require some receptivity is reasonable because we have a synergistic teaching, and the synergistic teaching requires some buy-in from people. And therefore, it's not wrong or offensive or not merciful or partial or anything. Krishna is just keeping with the synergistic doctrine that he's been espousing all throughout the Gita, that there has to be some buy-in from us. And so number three justifies and gives evidence for number one and especially number two, but for both of them, that there is some synergism that's required. That's our buy-in, and we call that buy-in being a devotee. And it could be a more generic understanding of the term. Did you guys follow number three? And then number four. Maybe it is meant to be followed completely strictly, but
you should go out of your way and try to teach it to everybody.
But devotees may go against this instruction. Krishna may have a responsibility as an omnipotent Supreme Lord to reserve more advanced teachings or the entire teaching of the Gita for people who are ready to turn towards him, and that's the synergism we've spoken about. Somehow or other, your guys' absolute inability to listen has woken me up, and I'm no longer tired. Krishna may be obliged to protect his supreme teaching. Krishna may be obliged to protect the entire teaching. Krishna may be obliged to speak about the synergism which is required to honor our free will. But devotees, as non-omnipotent, non-omniscient, but perhaps omnibenevolent living entities, ecstatic with love of Krishna, they may go against this generic teaching and show partiality to whoever they meet. Now, those people might deserve it from their previous karma, but we could even stretch it and go, those people don't deserve it. But those devotees, motivated by their own love for Krishna, they might just go for it anyway. Does that reflect poorly on Krishna? It does not. Why not? Because the devotees are their own free moral agents who get to make choices. Are the devotees at fault for not giving it to everybody? No, they're not, because the devotees are not omnipotent. And so it may be that Krishna has to say this, and the devotees get to go against it. And in any case, even if we modify the word bhakta a little bit to make it fit, we're still always walking the razor's edge and trying to convince somebody, then give them a little more, then convince them a little bit more, and then give them a little bit more. And that's the nature of devotion. And then finally, you could argue that the devotees themselves are the possessors of love of Krishna. Krishna doesn't even get to give love of himself out to people. Krishna is himself. Krishna does not possess love of himself. Do you possess love of yourself that you give to the people who fall in love with you? Think about it. You just are you, and some people love you. You follow? But you don't give love of yourself to those people. You're just you, and maybe they decide they want to love you. Then those people who love you can describe their love for you to somebody else in a way you can't. Because objectively speaking, and reasonably speaking, and logically speaking, Krishna, being the lovable object, is not the lover. It's not a fault for God not to be able to make a square circle, because square circles do not exist. It's also not a fault for Krishna not to be able to give you love of himself, because he just is himself. And the devotees who take the time to bequeath their love for Krishna to other people, it's truly their gift to give, because they're also free agents, and they possess that love because lovers have love for the beloved. Lovers have love for the beloved. The beloved is the object of love, but the lover is the possessor of love. The object has the qualities inherent within them that make the lover feel that love, but you can only love somebody if there's a difference between you and the person. And self-love is different than love for other people. It's not exactly the same. Self-love may be valuable, but self-love is not exactly the same as your love for other people. There's something magical about being different than other people. And then that love unifies you with that person in a magical, miraculous way. It may also be magical and miraculous to find unity within yourself. But it's different. The love of a mother for the child is different than the love of a mother for herself. And love makes two people one through that love, but it depends on them being different in order for that love to act magically and create that closeness. And so who possesses love for Krishna? The devotees. And therefore Krishna is giving the instructions he has to give to the devotees, who then go out in the world and pass their love of Krishna on. You could read the Bhagavad Gita a gazillion times. You wouldn't get out of the Gita what you get when you hear the Gita from someone who knows it. There's something magical about the person who understands the text. You can read books about stuff all you want to, Sometimes you need that personal touch. That's what makes it real. So from a number of angles of vision, although this verse naturally gives rise to some doubt about why would Krishna say you have to be a devotee in order to be given the instruction you should become a devotee, to make the doubt easy, simple. I think by looking at this verse and thinking about the subject in a serious way, answers to these questions reveal themselves. And I think the answers point to the very nature of devotion, the very nature of an omnipotent deity, the very nature of instruction given for all people for all time, and how individual devotees may be able to break that and not have that not be a fault. It actually becomes an ornament for the devotees, what might be a fault for Krishna, the fault of partiality. Is that you, Tadeo? Comment for me, please.
I think point number 4 is the best one, and it can be further substantiated by 2 verses prior where Krishna says, after hearing what I explained to you, do what you want to do.
That's nice. That's good. Thank you for commenting. Appreciate that. More feedback on this? Yeah.
So I've been thinking pretty deeply about how religious knowledge is really only passed through people, not just through reading books. But
today are you hearing him? I've been thinking deeply about how religious knowledge is passed through people, not books. Louder.
Yes, and what you just said about how it's really love that's passed through the devotee to someone who's yet to become a devotee.
And this idea that love belongs to the lover, and therefore it's the devotee's right and responsibility and dispensation and unique empowerment to give love for Krishna makes sense and resolves this doubt that he's been thinking about.
Yeah, and I realize I've been looking at the finger and not at the moon this whole time.
Yeah.
You really just put it together for me. It can make total
Good.
sense.
All right. Thank God one person followed. That's great. I feel good. 2 people. I got Tadeo and I got Nick. All right. More feedback? Yeah. Loud and proud.
I really appreciate it.
That's not loud. I'm just going to have to repeat what you say. I gave up on Nick.
I really appreciate it.
Why are you yelling at me?
I really appreciate it. Hearing these verses, and of course your explanation to your point, it's not something I could have gotten out of the text, and it speaks to the nature of this gift of having love of Krishna, that it's so great that you'd want to give it to everybody.
It's a beautiful idea that love of Krishna makes devotees lose their minds and want to give it to everybody. That's a beautiful idea. It's like when somebody breaks the beat a little bit, it becomes even more groovy. And so there's certain times you paint outside the lines, it makes the painting even more beautiful. And so that idea sits nicely with you, right?
Yeah.
Good. And it makes sense that love for Krishna it belongs to devotees. You can read this verse 1,000,000 times and not get out of it what our tradition has gotten out of it, which I tried to repeat to you guys. Some of this stuff is my own, to be honest. I've thought about the verse, but all my stuff is from other people, and so even if it's my own, it's really not. Okay. So Krishna just said something really heavy. You have to be a devotee to hear that. The whole Gita special, you got to at least turn towards Krishna. Why? Because you got to be involved. You got to turn towards Krishna. Well, why are devotees just going out there to help people? Maybe those people deserve the devotee. When the devotee finds that person, it's because they deserve it. Or maybe devotees as free moral agents are just wackily going around the universe, screwing up the law of karma by blessing everybody they possibly can and giving them love for Krishna, and messing up the general, generic, fair version of reality. And doing the best they can. And they have a right to do that, and they can get whatever karma they get for it. And Krishna doesn't need to worry about that. He said his piece, and now the devotees are going to do it the way they want to do it. And the devotees have that unique empowerment because love arguably belongs to the lover and not to the beloved. Interestingly, Krishna would best be able to convey his love for us. Krishna is also a lover. He's a lover of us. And so when Krishna speaks about his love for us, he'll speak most poignantly. Then he'll just be himself and we'll naturally fall in love with him. Or alternatively, we'll meet devotees who love Krishna and they'll tell us about him and then we'll fall in love with him. But Krishna can speak most poignantly about his love for us. And the devotees can speak most poignantly about their love for Krishna. And given that we're after love for Krishna, it makes sense that the devotees become our best friends because they have that which we seek. Ya idam paramam guhyam. One who this great secret, mad bhakteshu abhidasyati, who explains this great secret to my devotees. Bhakti mai param kritva, he's done the greatest devotion to me. Mame vaisasya samshaya, he'll come to me without a doubt. So now it's not just if you surrender all religion and turn towards Krishna and become a devotee, but if you teach this to other people, that is also bhakti. And in fact, it's the highest bhakti. And so, coming to him without a doubt, supreme bhakti, supreme instruction, supreme secret, all these same words are used again. For one who explains the supreme secret to devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed. At the end, he'll come back to me. Nacha tasman manusyeshu kaschin me priyakritamaha. And there is no one more dear to me than him anywhere. Bhavita nacha me tasmat anya priyataro bhuvi. And there will never be one more dear to me on this earth. There is no certain world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. So these three verses, coming right on the heels of Krishna's final instruction, now talk about how it's to be distributed, how it's to be disseminated, who's in charge of it, how fortunate they are, how close they are to Krishna. And it really puts an end cap on what you do with the teaching. Now the teaching's been given, and now how is it dispensed? How is it given out? We should be like, oh, I got to be a devotee, so they'll teach me. That's like we should think, oh, I want to be. Can I have it explained to me? I'm a devotee. I'll be a devotee. I want to hear it. I want to explain it to others. I want to please Krishna. And what you really have here is what's called a Pentecost. The Pentecost was 50 days after Jesus resurrected. He ascended to heaven, and he left his teachings in the hands of his disciples. Penta, 5. I don't know how it comes together, but it means 50. And so 50 days after Jesus resurrected, he went back to heaven, and he left his empowerment with his disciples, the apostles. And the apostles became the holders of Jesus' legacy to give to other people. In fact, the Gospels were not written by Jesus. They were written by his followers. If you love Jesus, you only know Jesus existed because his apostles wrote about him. There was no Jesus for anybody other than what's in the apostolic record. There is no non-apostolic record. There's no Roman record of Jesus' life. Everything we have on Jesus is based on the work of his apostles, who wrote down their remembrance of Jesus, and that became the Gospels. And that was the good news. And there is no Jesus without his apostles. They're the ones by how his name became known, how Christianity was birthed. It was birthed from his apostles. And they were given empowerment by him 50 days after he resurrected, according to traditional sources. And that was the Pentecost. And so you have here something like that, Krishna's empowerment of the devotees to pass on his teachings to others. And so it actually makes sense. You give that teaching, and then you talk about what to do with it. It's actually a nice finish. And now not only following Krishna's teaching is the highest bhakti, but rather passing that teaching on to other people becomes the highest bhakti. And so even better would be if you follow it and you pass it on to other people. That would be the perfect situation. Adhyeshate chaya imam dharmyam savadam avyayo. And one who will study this Dharma Samvad, this discourse on Dharma avyayo, of us too, of ours. Jnana yajena ten aham ishta. I am worshipped, I am loved by him with this sacrifice of knowledge. Memati, that's my opinion. And I declare that he who studies this sacred conversation of ours worships me by his intelligence. And one who listens with faith and without envy becomes free from sinful reactions and attains to the auspicious planets where the pious dwell. So Krishna's saying here, if you pass this instruction on, you're the greatest devotee. And if you just study it yourself, then that's also really special. And you've loved me in a special way and with your intelligence by studying it. And even if you just hear somebody studying it, then you're also blessed, and you also, great piety accrues to you, even if you're just in the vicinity and you hear it going on. Like, we're staying in Jaipur, and I rented a house for some overflow devotees to stay at, and the guy who I'm talking to, Kamal, his name means lotus, so it's just a kind of a standard Indian man's name, Kamal. So Kamal said to me, "Oh, you know, we're having a wedding a couple of houses down the next day, and so we'll be making some noise that night. We'll be making a little bit of noise." And he said, "Is that okay?" And I said, "Of course it's okay. It's a once-in-a-lifetime wedding of your nephew. Of course it's okay. We don't mind." He goes, "Oh, you'll probably enjoy it." I said, "We're not going to enjoy it. We go to sleep early. We don't want to hear fireworks and so much late at night. But it's a special day for you, and the least we can do is, you know, be happy for you and happy for your nephew." He's like, "Okay." So, just being in the vicinity, you end up hearing it, and that's a good thing for you. Not quite like hearing that person cackle like a coyote, or listening to them do their Bollywood songs in Jaipur when we go. But if you happen to be in the vicinity, you can't help but hear it, even that's a blessing. So Krishna's saying, here's my greatest teaching, follow it, you'll come to me. Tell people about this. And here are the rules, standard rules. Tell people about this. But wink and a nod, you'll be the best devotee if you tell people about this, and I'll let you figure out what to do with that. And if you just study it yourself, I feel loved by you and worshipped by you in a very special way. And you've used your intelligence. And even the guy down the street who just hears it, with some faith and without envy, if he just hears it, he has at least those basic qualifications. Even he gets blessed. And Arjuna says, "Kaschin etach shrutam tvaya tayikagrena chetasa." Have you, with a one-pointed attention, have you heard this? With ekagra, with one-pointed focus. Kaschin agyana sammoha pranashtaste? Has your ignorance, has the confusion of your ignorance been dispelled? O son of Partha, O conqueror of wealth, have you heard this with an attentive mind? Are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled? So Krishna's questioning Arjuna and saying, did you understand what I just told you? He's making sure the information sunk. Krishna is just speaking for his own benefit. He's speaking for the benefit of Arjuna. And so at the end of the Krishna's speech, he says, it's like a good teacher, have you understood me? And if you've understood me, then your illusion will be gone. So where are we at? Of course, you guys are all noticing that I follow Krishna on this point, and I quiz everybody all the time, and I'm on your case if you don't follow it. Because ultimately, my style of teaching isn't favorable for Instagram, because I like to talk to people and get into it with them and make sure they're following. And so if you guys weren't here, then I could just speak, and then you either get it or you wouldn't. But as soon as somebody's in front of me, then they become my primary student. Everybody else becomes secondary, and the class becomes making sure they followed. So you see here, Krishna and Arjuna having that conversation. Arjuna says, Nashta moha smritir labdha. My illusion has been destroyed, and I've regained my memory. This whole point about memory, like memory is you learn from your guru, and then if you can remember those teachings, then you're blessed. So memory is synonymous with intelligence, because your memory is the memory of all the things you've learned from all the people you've learned from through your life. And if you lose your memory, then you lose your intelligence. If you regain your memory, then you regain your intelligence. And so memory and intelligence are more or less synonymous in Sanskrit, because your memory, your intelligence is the proper memory of everything you've learned through your life. Do you guys follow that? Tvat prasadam maya chutta. By your grace. By your grace. This has happened. Sito asmi gata sandeha. My doubts are gone. I'm properly situated. Karishe, I'm going to do. Vachanam tava, what you've instructed me to do. My illusion is gone. I've regained my memory by your mercy. I'm now firm and free from doubt, and am prepared to act according to your instruction. Sanjaya now telescopes back, and Sanjaya says, thus I have heard the conversation of two great souls, Krishna and Arjuna, and so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end. This is interesting because Roma Harsha, your hair standing on end, is a symptom of great ecstatic love of God. Sometimes when you chant, or when you see Krishna, or when you remember Krishna in a special way, when you serve Krishna in a special way, you'll feel like some inspiration, some ecstasy even. Your hair will stand on end. Tears will come from your eyes. You'll feel stunned. You'll tremble. And Sanjaya, interestingly, is arguing that he's having those ecstatic symptoms, which of course is a testimony to his devotion, that he heard properly. It also indicates what should be the result of hearing the Gita properly, is your hair should stand on end. You should feel stunned. If you've understood Krishna's work, it'll stun you. If you understand what Krishna's teaching and you get it, you'll be stunned. And we know that from Sanjaya's own reaction. But it's also, in our literature, this is a very important point of what's the result of devotion. What are signs of devotion? And we have practical signs such as detachment from this world and so on and so forth. But there's also these other signs that if they're in combination with those more standard signs, they become a good indication that you're advancing. And so we see Sanjay displaying these. By the mercy of Vyas, Vyas Prasadat, by Vyasa's mercy, by his guru's mercy, Sanjay is a disciple of Vyas. I have heard these most confidential talks directly from the master of all mysticism, Krishna, who is speaking personally to Arjuna. So it's amazing, but although he heard Krishna and Arjuna talking directly, his statement is, I'm ecstatic, and it's by the grace of my guru that I heard it. And so this idea of respecting and appreciating your guru and the devotee by whose grace you get a chance to witness Krishna, it's right there in the end of the Gita. We talked about Tvat Prasada, Arjuna saying, by your grace to Krishna. Krishna says, Mat Prasada, by my grace you'll cross over all difficulties. But you have your Sanjay showing the point about the guru-disciple relationship by saying, Vyas Prasada, by Vyasa's grace. This happened. Which, in a not terribly indirect way, substantiates the arguments I made about what it means for devotees to be empowered to pass on the teachings. You follow? It's not super far away from the verses, and it does in some way substantiate that whole analysis I offered. That Mat Prasada, my grace, for Arjuna became Tvat Prasada, your grace, and now it's become Vyas Prasada, by Vyasa's grace. Because the devotees were given the empowerment to pass on these teachings, and therefore for Sanjay, even though he was witnessing the conversation, he knows he was only able to do so by the grace of his guru, and therefore his gratitude is towards Vyasa. As he's feeling ecstatic, as he's experiencing ecstasy, as he's having a vision of Krishna, the appreciation for his guru is just right there. Do you guys follow this? O King, as I repeatedly recall this wondrous and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I take pleasure being thrilled at every moment. O King, as I remember the wonderful form of Lord Krishna, I'm struck with wonder more and more, and I rejoice again and again. Samsmritya sambadam imam. Remembering and remembering this dialogue. Samsmritya rupam ati adbhutam harehe. Remembering and remembering this wonderful, greatly beautiful and wonderful form of Hari, of Krishna. And so you see here, I'm reading the book, I'm hearing the book, I'm hearing the conversation, I'm seeing Krishna. The book is leading me to the person. I'm moving from the book to the person. I'm remembering the book, I'm remembering the person. I'm seeing the book, I'm seeing the person. I'm entering the book, I'm having a vision of the Absolute. And so you see this taking place right here. The same language is used. And he moves from the text to the deity himself, showing that how the text leads to the deity. It's an extremely important point. It's the point of a revelation. A revealed text, a revealed tradition, then takes you back through time and space and takes you to a sacred place where you can encounter Krishna. That's the whole point of a sacred literature, of a sacred tradition, is it transports you. I don't know if you guys get the significance of this. But it's very significant. The empowerment of the devotees. The mission that they're given to spread this to the world. The naturalness of them being empowered. The impossibility of Krishna doing it any other way. Krishna playing his role, the devotees playing theirs, and pushing the envelope. The Pentecost of how they've been empowered. That being manifested as Sanjay gives credit to his Guru Vyas, by whose grace he's able to witness this thing. And then the remembrance of that conversation, which leads to the remembrance of the person the conversation is about. And you experience the person through the book. And that's the magic of a sacred text. It's all here. This is like so much information at the end of the text. It's so good It's such like thick information at the end of a text. It's almost like, how did Krishna manage to like continue wowing us and giving us an amazing text even after he just finished with those 2 verses that were the climax of the whole text, and now these verses themselves become a sort of like after effect, after burner, like after, zenith, that becomes like incredibly valuable. It's just like it's like the nuts and the cherry on top of the sundae. They're like indispensable elements. They just make it like infinitely better. Like, who came up with that? Like, are you kidding me? Nuts and a cherry. I mean, the cherries suck, but whatever. They look cool. On top of a sundae and whipped cream. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, what's a sundae without whipped cream and some nuts on top, right? Of course, you could be an anti-nuts person. That's cool. But at least the whipped cream, nobody can debate. You know what I mean? At least the hot fudge you can't complain about, Then you just got a thing of ice cream. You take ice cream and you put like hot fudge on top of ice cream. Like, are you kidding me? Like, who came up with that? How's that work? Like, you don't put something hot on top of something cold, but somehow or other, it's like perfect, And so you see this incredible combination here. And then finally, there's this Pala Stuti, this final benediction that we get because we heard the text. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, where there is Krishna, Yogeshwar, the Lord of Yoga, the master of all mystic power. Yatra Parto Dhanurdhara, wherever there is Arjuna, the holder of the bow. This combination, a devotee and the deity, this sacred dialogue, this revelation, this teaching of bhakti between the Lord and the devotee, this relationship between the Lord and his devotee, this magic that happens in between the life of a devotee and Krishna, that's exemplified and epitomized by Krishna and Arjuna, wherever these people are, wherever this conversation is, wherever the Gita is sung, arguably even if it's in a different language, arguably even if it's a different tradition, if we want to be ecumenical and Catholic about the whole thing, and really open, where that is, but definitely where the Gita is spoken, where these personalities are invoked by their presence in this sacred text. Tatra, there will be Shri, Vijaya, Bhuti, Dhruva, Niti, Matirmama. My opinion is that in that place, Krishna's speaking, of course, or I guess it could be Sanjay actually, but my opinion is in that place there will be Shri, opulence, money, success. Vijaya, victory. Bhuti, wealth, power, opulence again. Dhruva, steadfastness, or Dhruva Niti. There will be great integrity. There'll be great integrity. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion. And we are done. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Lord Premanande. All right. Feedback?